In today's episode, I accidentally served a guy alcohol who was 5 years sober. Male Karen made me win my new team. Unconscious guessed what the hell happened here? Old man orders omelet, strips. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I accidentally served a guy alcohol who was 5 years sober. This was a party of 8 that came in right during the rush on a Friday night. I started taking drink orders around the table, and each person ordered a cocktail from the menu. When I got to the last guy, he asked the ingredients of a cocktail on the menu, which had both whiskey and vodka in it. I listed every ingredient, including the bitters and liqueur, every bit of which are comprised of alcohol, and he asked if the drink could be made without the whiskey. I said that since the whiskey is a large portion of the drink, redacting it is likely to unbalance the taste, but I could ask the bartender if it could be crafted nicely without the whiskey, perhaps substituting more vodka. He said, "I don't want it made with more vodka, just no whiskey." I sensed that we might be misunderstanding each other, so I reiterated that the cocktail is comprised of all alcohol, whiskey or not. And was he perhaps maybe interested in a nice mocktail? I really should have just asked him point blank if what he wanted was a non-alcoholic drink, but he seemed so anxious, and all his friends were staring at him, none of whom said anything by the way, and I didn't want to insult his intelligence and make things worse. At any rate, he seemed to get really agitated at the mention of mocktail and said, "No, I don't want that, just please ask the bartender if they can make it with no whiskey." So I did as much, and because it was a busy night, and I was absolutely in the seaweeds, a coworker, bless her, ran my drinks for me. She dropped the drinks off without issue, and a few minutes later, when I was able to return to the table, I immediately noticed a tone change. Everyone was quiet, and a depressing miasma was radiating ominously from guy number 8. "There's been a bit of a mistack," one of his friends started saying, but all I could hear was him saying softly and darkly, "I was 5 years sober, but then I drank this," and he was clearly legitimately crestfallen. I barely remember how the rest of the interaction played out because I was so distressed at my mistake. I'm sure I apologized profusely, and I think I had the manager comp guy number 8's meal at the least, but he seemed so honestly disappointed, and he didn't try to take it out on me at all. I felt incredibly bad, because it clearly meant so much to him. Staying sober is a huge feat, and I don't take people's efforts lightly. Male Karen made me win my new team. I recently changed jobs and started working for one of the major craft beer breweries in my city. I've always been a huge fan of their beers, always wanted to work for them, and never made that a secret. 2 months ago they finally reached out because they needed a new manager for their taproom/brewery, a role I could not dream of even a few years ago, but I finally got there. I was sad about leaving my old team behind because working with them was like slipping into a warm bath, had inside jokes with everyone, knew everyone, and their moms, so to say, knew all the regulars and what they liked. In my last 2 weeks there I almost decided not to transfer because I was a little scared I would lose it all. The new team, though being friendly and welcoming, were quite reserved. Understandably, as they have the same I had at the place I left and are afraid of losing it. I've been trying my best to be as accommodating, open and friendly with them, but of course it takes more than just that to win people over. My chance came in the form of a male Karen. See, the way the taproom is laid out is pretty simple. Split a large building in half with a glass wall, but the brewery at one side. The other side in the taproom. But a bar in the middle of it, with 2 sets of 10 taps on the terrace side, busiest side, and one on the other side, the quiet side. Ideally we have 3 bartenders, so 3 bars. I refer to a set of taps as a bar open. This was the case in the beginning, when male Karen arrived. He was there with about 5 friends, so 6 in total. They took a seat at the back of the taproom, on the quiet side, and were able to get their beers there. At some point it got too bussy to have 3 bars open with 3 bartenders. We needed either 4, or man 2 bars with 3 bartenders. As the cook was out sick, I was manning the kitchen, which has a view of the bar. They closed one bar and made people K up at the other two. When I ran downstairs to grab some kitchen stuff, Karen asked me for a word. He explained that he was told to line up at the other side of the bar, because this side was now closed. He mentioned how much money he had spent and felt like he didn't have to line up. I explained to him that if this bar was closed, he did indeed need to line up. The fact that he had spent money here didn't mean he would get a special treatment. Everyone is spending money. About half an hour later, he appears in the kitchen window, now visibly drunk and pissed off. He again complained that he wasn't served at the back bar. I explained it was closed and he needed to line up. He used the blood-boiling argument of who is paying your salary? Is it me? Who has spent almost €200? Or is it the barman who doesn't want to serve me? Now I've had it with this dude. Sir, my employer and owner of this company pays my salary. Your €200 keeps the lights on just for today. That's it. If you think you get special treatment for spending €200, you're at the wrong place. If my staff tells you to line up, you line up. If they decide that's how it's best to run the bar, I support that. Either line up or leave. He looked at me and said, okay, then I know enough. I know enough, and he walked off. Few minutes later I see him behind the bar, talking to one of my bartenders behind the bar. I fly out of the kitchen, grab him by his arm and neck and yell, out. Out. Out as I steer him towards the door. One of his friends follows us and asks what's up. I ask him to gather their mates and stuff and leave. This gentleman has acted past his welcome. He didn't seem to agree, but they all left anyway. After checking on the bar team, who were all fine, I ran back into the kitchen, which was now backed up. After work we all had a drink together to evaluate the day, and one of the girls remarked how cool and good it was what I did. She said she didn't know what to do with this guy, and that he had been behind the bar before I saw him. She said the previous manager would let this thing slide, and would probably have given the man a round on the house, and that was why they didn't come to me to ask for help. She and some other people there remarked that my actions made them feel safer and more appreciated, especially when I said if they decided to do it that way, I support it. Those final few words made me feel good about making the decision to move there, and made me feel more optimistic about the future with the already great team. Unconscious guessed what the hell happened here? So I was waiting on a man and woman in their late 30s/early 40s last night. He came in first, orders 2 glasses of Pinot Noir for himself and her, and she arrives a bit after. They have 2 or 3 glasses of wine over about an hour and a half, check out, then want another, so I open a new check, they close out, then want another, so I do the same thing. She pays for their last drink that was still on its way, and I can tell she's a little tipsy, but she generally seemed just fine communicating, got her CC out, filled out her email for a receipt, etc. Was going to make sure they both were not driving home, but other than that I had no worries. Overall they order about 4 or 5 glasses over around 3 hours. As I'm around their table doing closing side work, the man calls me over, and I see the woman slumped over totally unconscious. I obviously check her pulse quick, make sure she's breathing, then try to see about waking her up. Shake her shoulder gently, pinch her hand, etc., and no response. The whole time the man is trying to put a glass of water to her lips despite the fact that she's totally out. I recommend to him strongly that we call someone, and he adamantly tells me not to, saying to grab an ice pack, and that he would wake her up himself. I again strongly recommend that we call someone, but end up going to grab my manager and asking about an ice pack. Long story short, this guy comes over and starts blabbing about how he's a multi-millionaire and can't deal with this headache. Then tells my manager, who's calling the another more senior manager to see what to do, explicitly not to call anyone else, and especially not to call the police. At this point his blatant selfishness and narcissism is absolutely pissing me off, so I tell him the obvious fact that her safety is our top priority, and that we are going to do whatever we need to do to make sure she gets the help she needs. She ends up very faintly waking up about 10 minutes later, but would not open her eyes, and would only sometimes respond with a nod or shake of her head to my questions. The cops and medical squad arrive, take her out on a stretcher as she starts crying, gets the man's information, and leave with her. He sits down and starts making a bunch of phone calls, comes up and tries to talk to me and make sure everything is cool. It was not, and then leaves about 15 minutes later once his ride arrives. Reddit, what happened here? Was she drugged? Have a medical emergency? I'm a bit worried that I overserved her, but I talked to my manager who checked my tickets and she said there wasn't any way that they were overserved. Very confused. Old man orders omelet, strips. A few years ago I worked at a casual restaurant that offered 2 different menus, one for breakfast, one for lunch/dinner. I am being entirely honest when I say I despise this from the very bottom of my heart. It's bad enough that people come in wanting X cuisine when you only offer Y, it's even worse when you do offer X cuisine, but they're 2 hours late and determined to make it your problem. When I first started working at this restaurant, my job was primarily taking to-go orders until I learned the 2 menus and understood how the restaurant operated. It was one such morning, around 11:30, when an elderly man, who I will proceed with naming Mr. Omelette, walks in and asks for an omelette off our breakfast menu. I let him know we stopped serving breakfast at 10. This, he feels, is unacceptable. Mr. Omelette starts berating me, as it's not even noon yet and you clearly don't know what you're doing if you think I can't have an omelette in the morning time. I'm not interested in arguing, so to placate him, I go ask the kitchen whether they're still willing to make an omelette for this old man. Obviously, they refuse because breakfast ended over an hour and a half ago, but my manager Noreen was there. In Noreen's eyes, it's better for both parties if we spend 5 minutes frying an omelette than to spend 15 arguing that we can't. I don't like it, but she does have a point, so I tell Mr. Omelette that my manager said we'll be able to make it this time. I ask him to wait at the pickup counter, to which he responds, "What if I don't want to?" Folks, in my working career, is the one and only time, but I don't wanna has been brought up in guise as a legitimate complaint. It's not me job.jpg to coddle customers who are being intentionally petulant. He's already berated me once. I'm not gonna play a cater to you game for my $13 per hour. I just tell him, well, that's where your food's going to be. He says fine and sulks over to the pickup counter, where I figure that'll be the end of it. We're busy, so when it's ready I do what we do with to-go food. I leave his bag at the pickup counter and call out the order. It sits there for some time. Mr. Omelette doesn't come to claim it. I figure he's in the bathroom or something and get back to work. A while later, my co-worker comes to relieve me from the to-goes so I can take my break. I go outside to chill and don't see the Mr. Omelette there until he grabs my arm. I laugh, just a bit, in incredulity, and this old B** tells me, don't laugh. This is ridiculous, I've been waiting half an hour for an omelette. I go inside and Mr. Omelette follows me. I point to the bag on the counter and say there's your omelette, where I told you it'd be. Mr. Omelette, of course, demands his money back. I go get Noreen, not only because of the refund, but now because I have a man who was cursing and thought it was okay to put his hands on me. Noreen, who is by all accounts a very wholesome southern lady, goes back up to the front to find the man. She immediately pulls the cash refund from the register and grabs the omelette back. Then she tells him it's unacceptable to curse at employees, he will not be served, and to leave or she would have him trespassed. Mr. Omelette responds as thus. You stupid, you act like you work at McDonald's, and you look like it too. And so Noreen pulls out her phone and calls 911 on a belligerent man harassing employees. Even as Noreen is on the phone with the authorities, he spends the whole time yelling that she's a stupid, the restaurant is sh*t, and all sorts of other fun obscenities. Basically all the things I wish I could say when I'm ready to storm out, except rather than storm out, Mr. Omelette stands directly in front of the cash register. A handful of customers are uncomfortable and leave. When the cops do actually arrive, as Noreen said they would, the old man finally realizes there will be consequences for his actions. He decides it's time to pull out his trump card. Not just any trump card, and certainly not a well-thought-out trump card, but a trump card nonetheless. Mr. Omelette unbuckles his belt, hurls his pants at an officer, and then throws himself onto the floor as if he were having a seizure. Despite his brilliant, awful performance, the man is apprehended and removed from the premises. And that is the tale of how I got a free hour-old omelette.